The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place, filled with powerful and ancient species who had ruled the stars for eons. The Zarkothi Empire was one such force, a cold, ruthless civilization that stretched across the outer rim of the galaxy. Their ships were enormous, capable of crushing entire fleets with ease, and their technology was far beyond anything the younger species could imagine. To them, the newer races in the galaxy were nothing more than ants, insignificant and weak. Among these younger races, humans were considered especially harmless. They had only recently discovered space travel, and their ships were small and outdated compared to the mighty warships of the Zarkothi and other powerful species. The Zarkothi viewed humans as a curious oddity, a species that had no real place in the grand cosmic order. Earth, a tiny blue world on the edge of the galaxy, seemed like nothing more than a quaint, far-off rock. The humans, with their strange ways and endless optimism, were seen as nothing to worry about. High Commander Droth, the leader of the Zarkothi fleet, sat in his command chair, looking down on the tiny dot of Earth from the bridge of his flagship. He chuckled to himself, amused by the thought that such a primitive species could ever pose a threat to the Zarkothi Empire. "It's time to add another planet to the Empire," Droth said to his officers, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Prepare the fleet. We'll show these humans what it means to be ruled." The Zarkothi fleet, a force of 30 enormous warships, descended toward Earth's orbit without any warning. They didn't send messages or give any ultimatum. They didn't need to. The humans, after all, were supposed to be harmless. The first target was the moon base, a research facility that humans had built to study space. The Zarkothi obliterated it in an instant, turning it into nothing more than debris floating in space. Next, they fired upon Earth's satellites, severing the planet's connection to the rest of the galaxy. Within hours, the Zarkothi had begun their invasion. The cities on Earth's surface were the next targets. No one expected the humans to retaliate, and they didn't. Not at first. The United Earth Defense, the humans' military force, scrambled to respond. But their weapons were far too weak. Their ships were slow, and their shields were no match for the firepower of the Zarkothi war cruisers. The humans fought back, of course, but it was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a small paddle. As the Zarkothi continued their attack, wiping out major cities and causing untold destruction, the galaxy's other alien races watched with disinterest. They'd seen it all before, empire-building species conquering weaker planets and wiping out their inhabitants. The humans, like so many others, were nothing more than a fleeting blip in the galaxy's history. Or so they thought. The devastation that followed the Zarkothi's assault on Earth was swift and brutal. The humans, caught off guard and overwhelmed by the power of the alien fleet, initially seemed to have no chance. The first target was the moon base, where humans had been conducting scientific research, studying the cosmos in ways that had once inspired hope for the future. With a single strike, the Zarkothi destroyed it, reducing the facility to rubble. The humans barely had time to react. Communications with Earth's satellites were severed, leaving the planet isolated from the outside galaxy. Panic set in across the globe. People scrambled for safety, but there was no place to hide. Zarkothi ships hovered above the planet, their presence like dark shadows in the sky. The human military, the United Earth Defense, was quick to mobilize, but their weapons were no match for the sheer power of the Zarkothi warships. The humans had no time to prepare for such a brutal onslaught. Their fighters, though valiant, were outgunned and outclassed by the Zarkothi ships. Within hours, 3 major cities were leveled, their buildings reduced to nothing but rubble, and millions of lives were lost in the blink of an eye. The humans fought back with everything they had, but it was clear that they were outmatched. Still, they refused to surrender. Their resilience, their spirit, burned brighter than the fires consuming their cities. Across the galaxy, other alien races watched in detached curiosity. They had long written off humanity as insignificant, but the destruction taking place on Earth was still surprising. The Zarkathi had always been known for their cold efficiency, and they didn't hesitate to wipe out anything that stood in their way. To the other species, the fall of Earth was just another conquest in the never-ending cycle of galactic power struggles. The humans were no different from any other conquered race, or so they thought. The Zarkathi didn't just destroy cities, they targeted the heart of humanity's strength. Earth's defenses crumbled as the relentless attack continued. Yet, in the midst of chaos and destruction, something began to stir deep beneath the planet's surface, something long hidden and buried. A secret that only a few humans knew about. A backup plan created by the brightest minds on Earth. One that had been designed for the worst-case scenario. It had been hidden for decades, waiting for the moment when humanity would have no other choice but to use it. But that moment had now arrived. As the Zarkathi fleet continued its relentless assault, humanity's hidden weapon began to awaken. The Zarkathi had underestimated humans, not realizing that beneath their calm, their harmless smiles, there lay an unimaginable power. One that was about to rise from the ashes of a planet they thought they had already conquered. Deep under the frozen wastelands of Antarctica, the Black Protocol was set into motion. This was no ordinary defense plan, but a hidden safeguard designed for a time when humanity's survival was threatened beyond all hope. For years, the world's greatest minds had worked in secret, crafting something extraordinary, a final line of defense that could rival the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. Buried beneath layers of ice and rock, deep inside an underground facility, the Black Protocol had been waiting for the right moment to be activated. That moment had arrived, as the Zarkathi decimated Earth's surface and humanity's forces struggled to fight back. The AI systems buried in the depths of Antarctica came online. The hum of ancient machines filled the cold, empty air. The lights flickered to life in a massive underground control room, and with a single command, the sleeping warships began to stir. 12 colossal ships, built for nothing less than the annihilation of entire fleets, began their slow rise from the icy depths. These war arcs were not like anything humanity had ever built before. Their designs were based on forgotten technologies, some of them so advanced that even the most powerful alien species in the galaxy would have difficulty understanding them. Powered by dark matter and fueled by an energy that defied the laws of physics, the war arcs were capable of feats that would have seemed impossible just a few years ago. Each ship was an unstoppable force, and it was not just their size that made them formidable, but their advanced weaponry, cloaking capabilities, and defensive systems. Only a select few humans knew of their existence, and now they would be the ones to pilot them. Each war arc had a single human pilot, someone specially trained for this moment. They were not soldiers in the traditional sense, but elite individuals who had been prepared to operate these advanced ships and lead humanity's final stand. These pilots had spent years studying the war arcs, learning every inch of their technology, and preparing for the impossible. When the first war arc emerged from the ice and broke through the surface of the Earth, its weapons were already online. The ship's massive cannons charged with energy, ready to unleash their devastating power. The pilots, now in control of their vessels, received their orders with calm precision. Engage the enemy. Show them what humanity is capable of. The war arcs moved with terrifying speed and precision. Their cloaking devices made them invisible to enemy sensors, and their advanced targeting systems locked onto Zarkathi ships before they even had time to react. One by one, the Zarkathi warships were torn apart. A single war arc took down a Zarkathi dreadnought with ease, its dark matter-powered weapons slicing through the alien vessel's defenses like a hot knife through butter. Another war arc warped across a nearby star, launching an attack that left entire Zarkathi fleets in flames. Humanity had a secret weapon, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Zarkathi had made a grave mistake underestimating the humans. They had thought that the planet was defenseless, but in truth, humanity had been preparing for this very moment. The War Arcs weren't just machines. They were the embodiment of human determination, a symbol of survival and defiance. As they struck down the Zarkathi ships one after another, the message was clear. Earth would not fall, and the galaxy would soon learn not to make the same mistake again. The humans didn't simply fight back. They sought out allies among the scattered races that had once been crushed by the Zarkathi Empire. The Zarkathi were notorious for their brutal conquests, and over the centuries, many species had been subjugated and brought to their knees by the Empire's overwhelming force. Yet, not all of these species had forgotten the pain and humiliation of their past. Some still held bitter grudges against the Zarkathi, waiting for the opportunity to strike back. That opportunity arrived the moment humanity's war arcs began, to unleash their power. The humans reached out to these alien races, offering an alliance. The message was simple. We fight together, or we all fall. The Varnock Hive, a race of insectoid beings who had been wiped out by the Zarkathi years ago, initially hesitated. They had their own ways of fighting, and they had long since retreated into the shadows of the galaxy. But when they saw the destruction wrought by the War Arcs and heard the human message, they realized that their time for vengeance had come. They agreed to join forces, ready to strike back at the empire that had crushed them. The Luthari swarm, a race of semi-organic beings that had once been part of the Zarkathi's conquests, also came on board. Though the swarm had lived in hiding for generations, they had retained their deep-seated hatred for the Zarkathi. They too agreed to ally with the humans. The Meiji Order, an ancient and secretive race of energy beings, took a little more convincing. The Meiji had remained neutral for centuries, avoiding any conflict with the Zarkathi, but they could not ignore the power of the War Arcs. When they finally agreed to assist, they added their unique ability to manipulate energy fields into the alliance. With these powerful allies, the humans' once lonely fight became a full-scale rebellion against the Zarkathi Empire. The War Arcs continued their relentless assault on Zarkathi forces, while the alien races of the Alliance provided invaluable support. The Varnock Hive's swarming fleets overwhelmed enemy ships, while the Luthari swarm's organic ships moved through the galaxy with eerie precision. The Meiji Order's manipulation of energy gave the humans the edge they needed to breach even the most heavily guarded Zarkathi strongholds. Together, the forces of humanity and their new allies swept through the galaxy, launching surprise attacks on Zarkathi fleets and bases. With each victory, the Zarkathi began to feel the weight of their mistake. They had underestimated humanity, and now the very species they had dismissed as weak was turning the tide of the war. The Zarkathi High Command began to realize the true extent of the danger they had invited by attacking Earth. Fear spread across their ranks as the once unstoppable empire began to crumble. The alliance of humans and their newfound allies had become a force to be reckoned with. The Zarkathi Empire, so sure of its dominance, now found itself fighting for survival. The humans had proven something crucial. They were not harmless, not by a long shot. And the galaxy would never look at them the same way again. The Zarkathi Empire, once a vast and seemingly invincible force, now found itself on the brink of collapse. The alliance of humans and their newfound allies had turned the tide of the war, and the Zarkathi fleet was scattered across the galaxy, struggling to defend what little remained of their empire. High Commander Droth, who had once dismissed the humans as weak and insignificant, now faced the full fury of their retaliation. His flagship, the Dreadlord, had been at the heart of the initial invasion, and he had watched as his mighty fleet, confident in its superiority, was slowly but steadily crushed under the relentless assault of the War Arcs and their allies. Droth's once unshakable confidence was now replaced with desperation. His once glorious empire was crumbling, and he found himself with few options left. The Zarkathi had never been a species known for mercy, but now, with the human-led alliance closing in, Droth was forced to make a decision. Rather than retreating into the shadows, he called for a final confrontation. It would be a desperate battle, the last stand of the Zarkothi Empire. The humans, who had been relentless in their pursuit of victory, responded with determination. They knew that the final battle would not be easy, but they were ready to end the war once and for all. Earth's war arcs, now joined by the fleets of the Varnock Hive, the Luthari Swarm, and the Magi Order, all moved toward the Zarkothi stronghold. The galaxy watched with bated breath as the two forces prepared to clash. The final confrontation took place in the shadow of a dying star, a place where the Zarkothi had built their most fortified base. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The war arcs, with their dark matter weapons, struck with devastating force, while the alien allies unleashed their full power. The Varnock Hive's swarming ships moved with unnatural precision, striking the Zarkothi fleet from all angles, while the Luthari Swarm's organic ships seemed to melt into the very fabric of space itself, emerging where the enemy least expected it. The Magi Order, with their energy manipulation, disrupted the Zarkothi's shields and weapons, leaving them vulnerable. It was a battle of attrition, and the Zarkothi quickly realized that they were no match for the combined might of their enemies. One by one, their ships were destroyed, their bases dismantled, and their once proud empire began to fall apart. In the chaos of battle, Droth realized the grim truth. His forces were doomed. The humans, the very species he had once dismissed as insignificant, had shown the galaxy just how powerful they could be. The final blow came when the Dreadlord, the flagship of the Zarkothi fleet, was destroyed in a single, coordinated strike. Droth, now a prisoner aboard his own shattered ship, was taken by the humans, his empire reduced to ashes. The war was over, and the galaxy would never forget the lesson the Zarkothi had learned too late. Humanity was not harmless. They had been underestimated, but no longer. The humans had proven that, when pushed to the brink, they could rise to unimaginable heights. Their victory wasn't just a defeat for the Zarkothi, it was a signal to the galaxy that Earth, and humanity, would never again be dismissed as insignificant. The balance of power had shifted, and humanity was now a force to be reckoned with. The fall of the Zarkothi Empire was only the beginning of humanity's rise. Earth, once isolated and fragile, had now earned its place among the stars. The victory over the Zarkothi sent ripples through the galaxy, shaking the very foundations of galactic politics. Alien races, who had long seen humanity as weak and inconsequential, began to reassess their position in the universe. Earth, led by a coalition of human military commanders and the newfound allies from the Varnock Hive, the Luthari Swarm, and the Magi Order, became a beacon of hope and power. With the Zarkothi's defeat, the human-led alliance set about restoring peace and order to the galaxy. They freed countless planets and species from the oppressive rule of the Zarkothi, bringing liberation to those who had lived in fear for generations. Yet, despite the relief of victory, new challenges arose. The galaxy was a vast and complicated place, with many different factions and interests, and not all of them were thrilled by the new balance of power. Some of the former allies of the Zarkothi began to question the strength of the human-led coalition, while others saw opportunity in the power vacuum created by the Empire's fall. Earth's leaders, however, had learned the harsh lessons of their past and were prepared to face whatever came next. A delicate balance of diplomacy and strength was needed to navigate the galaxy's complex political landscape. But the greatest challenge was the humans' own transformation. The victory over the Zarkothi had brought a shift in humanity's identity. No longer were they simply a race struggling for survival on a fragile planet. They had proven themselves capable of defending their world, and now they had to prove their worth as a galactic power. This new identity was not without internal conflict. Many of Earth's leaders and citizens struggled with the weight of their newfound power. The war had united humanity in a way that had never been possible before. But now, the question arose: What would they do with this power? The temptation to impose their will on other civilizations was great. Some factions within Earth's government saw the galaxy as a new frontier to be conquered, a place to expand humanity's influence. However, a growing number of leaders, including those who had fought in the war, realized that such actions would repeat the same mistakes the Zarkathi had made. Earth's true challenge was not just to survive, but to create a new way of life, one that respected the diversity of the galaxy while maintaining its newfound strength. As the years passed, Earth's influence spread, but so did its reputation. While some worlds saw humans as conquerors, others admired them for their resilience, courage, and ability to bring about change. The war arcs, now a symbol of human strength, were no longer the only weapon in Earth's arsenal. Diplomacy, alliances, and new technologies began to shape the future of the galaxy. The victory over the Zarkathi had shown humanity's potential, but what they did next would define whether they would continue to thrive or fall into the same destructive patterns of the empires that had come before them. The galaxy watched, as humanity, once underestimated, now stood at the crossroads of a new era. As the years passed, the consequences of humanity's triumph over the Zarkathi began to unfold. Earth, once an isolated planet on the edge of the galaxy, was now a central hub of power and influence. The alliance of human war arcs and alien factions had successfully shattered the Zarkathi's oppressive reign, but the cost of this victory was not easily borne. Despite their newfound strength, humanity faced challenges on multiple fronts. With the Zarkathi Empire fallen, many planets and species that had long been under their rule now found themselves in a state of uncertainty. Some worlds, once thriving, under the Zarkathi's control, began to fracture into chaos as power struggles erupted. Others, freed from centuries of tyranny, looked to humanity for guidance, unsure of how to rebuild their shattered societies. Earth's leaders, recognizing the fragile state of the galaxy, worked tirelessly to establish a new order based on cooperation rather than domination. They sought to build a coalition of civilizations, aiming to create a peaceful, united galactic council. Yet not all were eager to join this vision. Factions within Earth's own government began to grow divided. While some embraced the idea of forging peaceful alliances, others saw the galaxy as ripe for further expansion. There were whispers of human imperialism, of spreading their influence to the farthest corners of the galaxy, and of bringing other species under their control. Tensions began to rise as factions within Earth's government clashed over the future path. Meanwhile, the alien races that had once fought alongside humanity were not immune to internal strife. The Varnock Hive, their once unstoppable fleets, now under human leadership, began to grow restless. The Luthari swarm, now thriving in their newfound freedom, struggled to adapt to the changing political landscape. Even the Meiji Order, the enigmatic energy beings, began to question the extent of their involvement in the ongoing galactic struggles. The delicate balance of power that had emerged after the fall of the Zarkathi began to waver. Earth's position in the galaxy was more precarious than ever, caught between the desire to maintain peace and the temptation to assert dominance. Amidst this turmoil, a new threat emerged. Rumors spread of a shadowy force, one that had been watching humanity's rise with great interest. These mysterious entities, whose origins were unknown, began to infiltrate key systems, sowing discord and threatening the fragile alliances that humanity had worked so hard to build. The galaxy was once again on the brink of instability, and, this time, humanity would have to prove that its victory over the Zarkathi was not a fluke. As the unknown forces closed in, humanity stood at a crossroads. Would they repeat the mistakes of the past, becoming the very empire they had fought to destroy? Or would they rise to the challenge, forging a new path that could unite the galaxy? In peace? The future of the galaxy now lay in humanity's hands, and their next moves would determine whether they would truly become a force for good, or whether they would fall into the same darkness that had consumed the Zarkathi before. Them,